everybody, how are you doing? Okay. Cool. So my name is Chris Paquette. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Deep Intent. We're a New York-based advertising technology company. Topic of discussion today, I kind of want to help convey a sense that at least give some context to what people in the industry are doing to address the Russian interference that happened in the election from 2016. I had a couple slides here, but basically I'll kind of breeze through these. I know we have about 10 minutes or so, but basically the goal here is to at least convey a sense of what it is that we're doing today to help fight fake advertising and ultimately fake news. So let me just skip through here. I'm more than happy to talk about what Deep Intent does after the break here. But introducing verified ads. So just to give some context about what happened in the 2016 presidential elections and the elections in general, the Russians, through an entity called the Internet Research Agency, IRA, was essentially a Russian troll farm that was backed by a number of Russian oligarchs. And what they did was they poured money and built out a presence of about 1,000 bloggers, 1,000 social media experts. And what they did was they exploited new media to push an agenda, to push fake news, to distract, dismay, and dismantle really what the common mainstream media was trying to push in terms of news. So the IRA, what they did was they were acting very smart about it. They built an infrastructure of a number of different political groups, political-focused Facebook groups, fake accounts, bots, what have you. And they dispersed these across all the major social media channels and news channels in the US sphere of digital. They designed these in a way so that they were indistinguishable from mainstream news and mainstream social movements. Here's an example here of a site called blackmatters.us, which was later determined during the congressional hearings that was actually a front for aggravating different types of tensions in the country. It's designed to actually mimic the very socially reputable Black Lives Matter movement. So it's very obviously deceitful in the sense of what they were trying to do, but they had the intention of distorting the truth and dispersing lies about what was happening and exacerbating the tensions here in the United States. So having built that infrastructure, what they took advantage of was the widespread distribution network of what today's digital ad platforms could do. They took advantage specifically of more of the social channels. They took advantage of Twitter, of Facebook, and Google to reach a very broad audience. In fact, they reached 1 out of every 3 Americans with a fake advertisement. And with those tools, and one thing to note, as I'm sure many people here know, is those platforms have a tremendous amount of self-declared user data. This is data that users generally hand over with no intention to ever be used by a foreign entity. But things like their race, things like their religion, political orientation, interests, and affinities, and they hijacked that. They took advantage of that for specific ad targeting to hit them with very divisive ads. So what we did is just seeing the context of this in the larger scheme. Deep Intent being a newer company to the marketplace, we really kind of took this and internalized. We said, what can we do to make sure that our platform could not be manipulated or taken advantage of by a foreign power or anybody trying to manipulate the elections in a negative way or an illegal way. So by analyzing the different vector, we call it a vector of an attack, we noticed that the IRA left a number of different breadcrumbs upon which we could use that to further catch them if they were to come across our platform. Things like paying for ads in rubles, which I think Senator Al Franken hammered in on Facebook for, or using things like proxies, right? Known internet servers to route the communications from Russia over through like states like Florida or Georgia or really anywhere in the United States. And they had thousands of people doing this. So just to give some context, let's think a little bit about kind of what the incentives are and kind of how they use this, right? How they were even able to take this on. Companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google operate at a massive, massive scale, no doubt about that. And they are incentivized to reduce the time or reduce the friction for creating ads and creating accounts. So given the fact that these entities operate at millions, they have millions of businesses, they have billions of users, it's very hard for them to scan and validate every single entity, right? But one thing as well is that there really has never been a defined way for the ad industry to assess an advertiser for malicious intentions or a background that just doesn't really fit the mold of why people should be advertising, right? Or legitimacy. So just to kind of run it through, and I'm sure many people understand here, I mean, effectively what they did was they set up a fake group here, in this case Black Matters. They controlled that page, they used Facebook, and they pushed an ad here that a couple days after the election, they were pushing this message here in actually a rally that was happening in Union Square, just a couple blocks south of my apartment. And actually, there's a link here as well. But the result here is that they were able to get thousands of people into the street. Thousands of people, thousands of Americans were mobilized to take up and march against the president. You know, it says something, right, about the power of social media, the power of digital advertising. But it also, for me, created a sense of urgency around the need to make sure that these conduits that we provide are safe. So sitting with my tech team, we were looking at, okay, how do we build something, how do we build a defense against this type of advertisement, or this type of intention? So we're the first company that we know of today that is releasing a twofold product, not just to really bring transparency to who bought that ad, what advertiser bought that ad, where they're based out of, how do you get in touch with them if you want to learn more about them. But we also are introducing a verification process that really combines common sense, common business sense of know your customer with the technology scale of having artificial intelligence be able to scan creatives and understand what exactly that ad is trying to communicate. So here's an example, and this is a beta kind of format of kind of what we're doing, but effectively you'll see the verified ad shield on the top right corner of the ad. When a user hovers over that will show information about who that ad was purchased by. It'll show where you can go, where they're registered, where they're located, and whether or not it's authorized and paid for by a political candidate. The verification technology piece is really kind of the new thing that we're really proud of. So using a mix of AI, really computer vision and natural language processing, and human review, we built a human-machine scalable system here. Effectively what that means is that we're relying on the ability for machines to automate that process of doing more routine scans, and then using the humans to really focus in on the items that, you know, the really serious or high potential fraudulent actors. So effectively on our platform, we operate a DSP. What we're doing is we're constantly scanning creatives, and if an advertiser is not registered as a verified political advertiser, we immediately suspend their account, and then we kick them over to an audit. Through that audit, we actually compile some data points here, and I'll kind of run through these really quick. We look at the domain, we look at whether that domain is registered by that advertiser, the registration date, the FEC ID, so there's committee IDs and candidate IDs. We look for the location of where that entity is registered, whether that's a registered, or what the entity type is, the affiliation with a certain candidate or the authorization by a candidate, whether or not there's individuals publicly associated with the entity. That actually turns out to be quite a big indicator as well. Are the individuals based in the US? And were the contact, by the means by which they contacted us and we communicate with that advertiser, are they based in the US or using IP addresses registered in the US? If a entity passes all of those, we submit them, we give them the verified approval. Let's take a quick look at kind of what the Black Matters account would have done on our platform. Advertiser Black Matters, domain Black Matters US, domain owned by an advertiser, yes. But here's where it kind of falls off. The questions start to be raised. Domain was registered in 2015, which is 1 year before the actual, before the election. There's no FEC ID, there's an unknown location, there's no individuals associated, there's no entity, there's no individuals located in the US, and they would have been using, according to the hearings that happened on the Senate Hill, or the Capitol Hill, in front of the Senate, they were using known proxies to communicate with, to make it seem like the traffic was coming from the US. We would have blocked that. So what we did was we took a broader look. Actually, during the hearings, there was, I think, 2,700 individual fake accounts that were submitted to Congress. We took that list, and we randomly selected 30 of those accounts. Here's just 3 of them right there: LGBT United, American Made, Heart of Texas. And we ran them through that same process. And what we found was we would have blocked all of those advertisers as well, based on the simple fact that you need to know who your advertiser is. And I really think that this exercise, more than anything, more of a process, really just kind of underscores the importance, or comments on a kind of a dynamic that's happening in today's digital space, where you have companies that are pushing for hyper growth, hyper scale, but then they lose that sense of knowing who it is that's actually using their platform, their technology. So we hope that this is a system that we think could be used by companies to really, or at least a framework to vet and understand who it is that's advertising on their platform. So where we are today, and John will get off in a second, but basically as we head into the 2018 elections, there are federal legislation, there's federal legislation, state legislation like the one proposed in New York that really will start to close those legal loopholes in political advertising, and really will push for more accountability from advertisers, as well as, more importantly, the platforms that they're serving, or that are serving those ads. We hope that this is a model that other companies like us, even our competitors, can use to further vet and validate their accounts, their advertisers, and really push to not only create a better, safer digital experience, but a stronger democracy. Cool. Thanks.